Hello, my name is Tommy Walsh, and I was asked to do the introduction to this video about the organized crime boss James Whitey Bulger, who ran the Winter Hill Gang in the area around Boston, Massachusetts for many years, and made millions of dollars for the gang under his tutelage. Whitey Bulger was always under a lot of heat, and he realized that one day he was probably going to get pinched. But he prepared for that day well in advance. He had numerous safe deposit boxes all over the United States and Europe that were stuffed with cash and false identities. Then, in December of 1994, Whitey Bulger got a tip from a friend of his who happened to be an FBI agent that a RICO indictment was going to be handed down against him. So on December the 23rd of 1994, Whitey Bulger went on the lam with a girlfriend of his by the name of Teresa Stanley. They visited New York City, New Orleans, San Francisco, Los Angeles, but after about 30 days on the lam, Teresa Stanley realized that this was not the life for her and she missed her kids, so she went back home. Whitey Bulger then made contact with another girlfriend of his by the name of Catherine Gregg, and they went on the lam together. Then in April of 1998, they got an apartment together in Santa Monica, California, under assumed names. They were going by Charles and Carol Gasco, and they lived in that apartment together for 13 years, undetected, under the radar, until finally, on June the 22nd, 2011, they were arrested by the FBI. And that was it. Whitey Bulger went on trial for money laundering, racketeering, drug trafficking, 11 murders and other charges, and he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Then, in October of 2018, at the age of 89 years old, Whitey Bulger was murdered in prison by other inmates. And that was 2.5 years ago, and to this day, nobody for sure knows who did it. So Whitey Bulger was on the lam for 16.5 years. 13 of those years were living in sunny Southern California in Santa Monica, 2 blocks from the beach in a rent-controlled apartment. So this is the apartment building where Whitey Bulger lived for almost 14 years. 1012 3rd Street in Santa Monica. It's just a couple of 3 streets away from the beach. And I came down from this direction, and I was on Washington, and I turned left on 3rd Street, and here we are. Whitey Bulger lived on the 3rd floor of the apartment building in the front right unit. He had a good view of the street, so he could see anyone approaching. Here's Whitey Bulger as a young man. By this time, he had already been arrested for assault, forgery, and armed robbery. Here he is in later incarcerations. Here is a segment of an interview that I was able to obtain with a former mob associate of Whitey Bulger. He agreed to do this interview if he could maintain his anonymity. So the interview is in silhouette. I knew Jimmy Bulger for many years. We were involved in a couple of endeavors. A lot of people in organized crime will prey on big businesses and the wealthy. Jimmy did all that, but he also stole from other criminals. You can't be a Jack Russell and get away with that. You've got to be a big, mean dog. There was once a attractive young lady who was a lot of fun, and I wanted to ask her out. I found out that she was in a on-again, off-again, volatile relationship with Jimmy. I decided he was at the table first. I'm not going to enjoy this piece of pie. It's a big bakery. Jimmy was a very intelligent guy, but he could also be very dangerous. If he came at you with a knife, don't expect a flesh wound. He'd find an organ. Here is John Conley, the FBI agent that tipped off Bulger about the pending RICO indictment. John Conley was eventually convicted of racketeering, obstruction of justice, and murder charges stemming from his relationship with Bulger, and sentenced to 40 years in prison, but was granted a medical release from incarceration on the 17th of February, 2021. He is now 80 years old. Here is Bulger's girlfriend, Teresa Stanley, who he first went on the lam with in 1994. And here he is with Catherine Gregg. And more images with Catherine Gregg. Bulger was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list in 1999 and was considered the most wanted person on the list behind Osama bin Laden. After the death of Osama bin Laden on May 2, 2011, Bulger moved to the top of the 10 Most Wanted list. Bulger had been featured on the television show America's Most Wanted 16 times between 1995 and 2010. Then, in 2011, Anna Bjorn recognized Whitey Bulger and Catherine Gregg as her former neighbors when she saw an FBI program about the couple on television. She received the $2 million reward leading to Bulger's capture. Anna Bjorn, a former model, actress, and Miss Iceland 1974, was now living in Iceland when she saw the program on TV. Here's a photo of Anna Bjorn, Whitey Bulger, and Catherine Gregg at the time of the arrests. Here is a photo of Whitey Bulger taken just before he went into hiding in 1994. And here is a photo of Whitey Bulger being arrested about 17 years later. Whitey Bulger was an avid reader. On his apartment bookshelf is a book about Willie Sutton entitled Where the Money Was. Another book was entitled Escape from Alcatraz, which is of note because Whitey Bulger was imprisoned there in 1959. Another book is entitled Gas Pipe. That was a book about Anthony Casso, who was an American mobster and former underboss of the Lucchese crime family. He, like Bulger, was responsible for countless murders. Casso, who was arrested in 1993, died in prison in December of 2020. Another book on the shelf was entitled Brutal. It was authored by Kevin Weeks, who was a mobster lieutenant of Whitey Bulger in the Winter Hill Gang. He was convicted of racketeering and narcotics trafficking, became an informant, spent 5 years in prison, got out, and became an author. Here are some of the 30 firearms confiscated from Bulger's apartment upon his arrest. And here is a portion of the $822,000 in cash Bulger had in his apartment, some of it hidden in the walls. Here is some of the property and evidence confiscated from Bulger's apartment upon his arrest. Here is the intercom directory from the Princess Eugenia security apartment building that Bulger lived in. You'll notice the name Gasco, 6th from the bottom. In 2012, Catherine Gregg pleaded guilty to conspiracy to harbor a fugitive, conspiracy to commit identity fraud, and identity fraud. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. She was released from custody in 2020. She is now 69 years old. Whitey Bulger was beaten to death in prison in October 2018 and was laid to rest at St. Joseph Cemetery in Boston, Massachusetts.